All right. So over the last week and a half now, we've been talking about absolute monarchs. And on Friday, we talked about the Enlightenment. And we had some of those philosophers who were starting to think about, how they can challenge the power of the king. And so today we're going to look at probably the best example of that with the French Revolution, where we're going to see the people of France push back against the power of this absolute monarch. And we'll see just how it works out for them. So let me present my screen here. All right. So we're talking about France here. So briefly before we get to the project, I just wanted to explain how French society was kind of set up. So that's what the learning target is for right now. Students will explain how French society of what was called the Old Order led to revolution. So first, just as kind of a recap, we talked about a king of France already. There he is on the side looking fabulous. We have King Louis XIV. Remember, he had that nickname, the Sun King, which we discussed a little bit in class about him moving his government to the Palace of Versailles. That's going to be a main kind of plot point here in the French Revolution, is that Palace of Versailles being located outside of the capital of France, which is Paris. He kind of forced nobles to come and basically live in his palace in order to gain favor with him. There was also that French phrase that he stated, "L'état c'est moi." Remember, we talked about that a little bit in class as well. We discussed that translates to "I am the state." And essentially, he's saying that he is the government, that everyone has to kind of do what he says. He saw himself as this absolute monarch, the Sun King, right? The world kind of revolving around him, and that everyone kind of had to do as he wanted. So we're actually, the French Revolution is going to take place under King Louis XVI, so 2 kings later. And basically, we're going to talk just briefly here about how French society was set up in something called the Old Order. Now, under King Louis XVI, France was in a lot of trouble. First of all, they were very, very in debt. So France had, as you learned last year, probably, they had helped the what would become the United States fight their American Revolution. So the United States had asked for help in fighting against Great Britain, and France had been there both with their military and with money. And so they were deeply in debt for that. And at the same time, the kings and the nobles were starting to live very expensive lifestyles in that Palace of Versailles, way away from the people of France. Something that was out of their control was in 1788, there was a lot of starvation for the people of France because of a massive drought and brutal winter, led to just not enough crops being harvested to feed the population. And with the kings and the queens and the nobles kind of taking all of the food for themselves, there wasn't a whole lot left for peasants. And then, of course, what we talked about on Friday, these new Enlightenment ideas, with these philosophers starting to talk about, hey, maybe we shouldn't have an absolute monarch be in control. So there were 3 estates in the Old Order. So French society was basically divided into these 3 classes, with the king on top, not really a member of any of the estates, but kind of overseeing all of them. So the first estate was the church. Obviously for them, their religion was still very, very important. And so the Catholic Church was the first estate, which owns 10% of the land in France, while only being less than 1% of the population. So very few people were a member of this first estate, and yet they owned 10% of the land. And they also paid no taxes. As the church, they didn't have to pay anything to the government. They just kind of got to own that land basically for free. And some of these priests and bishops actually were some of the richest people in the country because of that, because of the fact that they didn't have to pay taxes. The second estate was the nobility. So those rich people that would get close to the king usually held positions within the government or the military. A lot of times these weren't actual jobs, though, because he was an absolute monarch and did everything himself. A lot of times these were just kind of what they called ceremonial jobs, as in they didn't have to actually do anything. They just kind of got paid to exist. And so they controlled much of the wealth of France. Also paid very few taxes, despite the fact that they controlled most of the money, and they were less than 2% of France's total population. So not very many people at all in this class. Now, the third estate was everybody else. So if you were not a member of a noble family, if you were not in the church, as in worked for the church like a priest or a bishop, then you were a part of the third estate, and that was 97% of France's population. And the thing about the third estate is that because it included everyone, there was a wide range of people that belonged to this. There were wealthy people, lawyers, merchants, factory owners, all of those fell into the third estate. But even the peasants would belong to this class, but they paid nearly all of the taxes in France, despite the fact that there's this wide range of money and wealth within this third estate. So in the old order, they would send representatives from each estate, so some from the church, some from the nobility, and some from everybody else. And each estate had one vote. So it was incredibly unfair because most of the time what they were voting on was passing new taxes. And the first and the second estate would usually, just say, we're not going to pay any taxes, so they'll vote together, meaning the third estate, which most of the population didn't get their way. And so in 1789, King Louis XVI called for the three estates to meet because of those financial problems they were having, with the plan to approve new taxes on the third estate. Project, yay! So we're going to take a look at our project guidelines here. I am going to post them to Google Classroom right now. Assign. Okay, so on Google Classroom, if you go to, it'll be the latest thing here in the stream, or it's also going to be under in-class assignments and project guidelines. This is the French Revolution slides project. There are two attachments there. Go ahead and open both of them up for me. Double check attendance, make sure we're good here. Okay, cool. So looking at this assignment here, I can see we're starting to trickle in here to the guidelines. Basically, what you're going to be doing is looking at the events of the French Revolution, and you're going to be creating a slideshow about each of those events. So this is one of those projects that we would have done in class with drawing, or, we've done like comic strips and stuff like that in class. But I had to kind of transfer it to a digital form here. So we're doing it on Google Slides. So it'll be a little different. Honestly, might be a little easier actually than before, but that's okay. All right. So looking at the directions here, our learning target, a little different here. We're going to analyze the events of the French Revolution. So reading the directions. So using your textbook, you will read and summarize the main events of the French Revolution. So it gives the chapter, it's chapter 20. It's the first 2 or 3 sections of chapter 20. I think it's the first 2 sections, 593 through 606. You will also find, or you may also find, information online. If you do, make sure you're writing in your own words, as well as put a link to your source. The French Revolution is kind of a highly talked about topic on the internet. You'll find tons of sources if you look it up online. So make sure you're using your own words if you find something, and then put a link somewhere on the slide if you do it that way. So you'll be creating a slideshow with at least one slide per event listed. I'm going to highlight this. You're not presenting this to the class. Don't worry. Don't ask me. I already know I'm going to get at least one email from somebody asking, do I have to present this? The answer is no. You don't have to present this. Like I said, we're just kind of changing this over to a slides project rather than how we've done it before. But then it lists the events here. There are 10 of them. They do go in order here, so they're already, the 3 estates I just kind of talked about a little bit. So you'll just kind of be recapping that, and then it goes all the way through the after the terror is the last one. So on each slide, you will summarize the events in 3 to 5 sentences. So about a paragraph here, because there's a lot that happens in each of these. So some questions to think about as you're summarizing them. What happened? Who was involved? Why did it happen? What was its importance? All of those sorts of things. Because these are events of the French Revolution, each one leads into the next one. So you can always include information about what happened on the previous side. So, because of the Great Fear, they did the next event. Those sorts of things, kind of connecting them together. It says you should include a picture for each topic. So you can use Google Images to find relevant images. So whether they're, paintings of things that happened, whether they're paintings of people that were involved, all of those sorts of things. Like I said, you'll find tons of things that you can use, but make sure they're relevant here for each event. Next, the slideshow has already been created for you. As you've probably seen, I already made the slideshow for you and even put the names of the events at the top. Now, it's very boring, the slideshow I put together here. It's literally just kind of all the topics on a white slide with the name at the top. So on the guidelines here, it says feel free to add slides, change layouts, styles, fonts, anything to make it stand out. I forgot to add this, but it's the same with all projects. Extra credit may be given to the best projects. So if your slideshow goes above and beyond and you put a lot of work into it and your slides look awesome and there's tons of cool stuff and lots of good pictures and lots of great information, you can earn some extra credit on this project. So keep that in mind. Now we're going to be working on this through all the way through next week. So you're going to have today to start it, and then we do have the long holiday week, but you do have tomorrow before the holiday starts. And then next week, Monday, we're just going to kind of be checking in, talking about the French Revolution a little bit in class, but there will be time on that day to work on it as well. And it's going to be due on Tuesday, December 1st by the end of the day. So you have over a week here to work on it, but there is kind of a lot of information to think about and read through. So that's why I'm giving over a week here to work on it. All right, so I have done a lot of talking here, looking at the directions. Does anybody have any questions here for me right off the bat? Feel free to talk or throw things in the chat if you have anything that you need to, or that you want to ask that might help the class. Nope. Okay, cool. So that is kind of all I wanted to talk about then today. So like I said, we have about a half hour left of class here today. So I'm going to give you guys this time to get started on the project. So if you have any questions, feel free to email me, or you can stay in chat here for a little bit while you guys get started. If you wanted to ask anything, I'll keep this Google Meet open. But otherwise, I'm going to give you guys today to work on this French Revolution project. So make sure you're using the textbook. Make sure you're looking up information online, and we'll be good to go. So, all right, I'll mute myself. But if you have a question, I'll be here to answer it. But otherwise, you guys can get started on the project. You as well. Thank you.